Movie villains come in all shapes and sizes, and often these devilish, dastardly diehards deserve a fitting end to their life's pursuit of global domination, sweet revenge, or cunning heists. To put it another way, every great movie villain needs a great movie death. However, not all are lucky enough to be afforded a decent last hurrah on their way to the pearly gates. It can be a tragedy. This is movie villains that had totally lame deaths. Bane, The Dark Knight Rises. Tom Hardy's Bane really is awesome. He's unique, motivated, lethal, and clever. The voice work received enough complaints from the IMAX previews to force Nolan and Hardy to remix the vocal tracks at the last minute, but nonetheless, Bane's vocalization has now become a parody of itself, imitated, aped, and analyzed, but above all, accepted and enjoyed by fans of the character. His immense physicality and meticulous diabolical plan skills are self-evident, as he has Batman by his furry little balls for most of the film. So when Catwoman showed up on the Batpod and sent him spinning across the floor like a freshly ripped Beyblade, it was a colossal anti-climax. Awesome villain, but it's a movie sin to go out like that, off guard and crying like a puppy.
La Llorona, The Curse of La Llorona. The Conjuring cinematic universe, which I'm right now coining the CCU, yep, take that Marvel, has been pretty hit and miss so far. Okay, it's been mostly miss with the exception of 2 mainline Conjuring movies, but what the spin-offs have lacked in story and scares, they've mostly made up for in memorable monsters. Take The Nun, for instance. That movie was, and I don't say this lightly, my arse, but audiences bought tickets anyway because the monster itself is such a terrifying creation, and has a silhouette that'll make you look twice at the coats hanging on the back of your bedroom door when you find yourself waking up unexpectedly at 4 AM. The villain got a death to match the ferocity of the design as well, with it taking the literal blood of Christ to kill her in an explosion of effects. The Curse of La Llorona didn't do its title character justice in the same way though. Not only was the film a total slog, but La Llorona goes out with little fanfare, with it only taking a crucifix jabbed in the heart for her to be vanquished. That's the kind of first death most horror movie monsters receive before immediately returning for a proper send-off, but here, that was it. It felt like a poor man's version of the Nun's Demise, and something that would be more at home in an episode of Supernatural.
Freddy Krueger, A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Killing Freddy has always seemed like a futile endeavor. He will just keep coming back for more, despite all his adversaries' best efforts to sing him a lullaby. This speaks volumes about the popularity of the character, who first appeared in Wes Craven's classic slasher bloodbath, A Nightmare on Elm Street. By the film's climax, Nancy's lost most of her friends, she's all alone, and she's as good as dead herself. But then she realizes at the last minute that the only way to defeat Freddy is to take his power away. She turns her back on him, and he simply disappears in a puff of 80s optical effects. It's a great film, but a long way from the epic ending Freddy probably deserved. Luckily, this defeat wouldn't stick.
Asami, Audition. Audition is one of the greatest horror movies ever made, led by the chilling, unnerving Asami, who closes the film out by torturing the man she's seeing, Aoyama. It's so good in fact that you'll easily forgive it for killing Asami at the end in the strangest way possible. As mentioned, the final reel of the film focuses on her torturing the man she's dating. Previously, she's come across as relatively meek and weak, though there's clearly something twisted behind the eyes. The finale reveals her to be a devilishly intelligent psychopath as she drugs Aoyama and toys with him, all the while sticking needles in his eyes and chopping off one of his feet. The only thing that stops her torment is the unexpected arrival of Aoyama's son. However, Asami reacts smartly to this as well, getting the drop on him with a bottle of mace. Despite having the upper hand, the son, who's in his early teens by the way, gets away and scrambles up the stairs, where he relatively easily kicks her down, which twists her neck. It's over in less than a minute and makes Asami's end feel a little bit hollow.
The Beast, Glass. When the closing moments of Split revealed its true identity as a sequel to Unbreakable, the fans went nuts. This was a masterstroke from a director who'd been conspicuously lacking in masterstrokes for the last few years. After 3 movies and a 19-year wait to see Dunn open up a serious can of whoop-ass Bruce Willis style, the result was Glass, and well, it kind of sucked. After alluding to what could have been an epic skyscraper confrontation, the 3 super beings resort to a dust-up in a car park. The punch-up doesn't last long, and despite all the hype, the fight results in the Beast being shot to death by the cops. He dies in the arms of Anna Taylor-Joy. Totally lame, but I guess that was the twist. The twist was that the movie sucked all along.
Jason, Friday the 13th Part 3. Jason has gone through a lot of bollocks over the course of the Friday the 13th franchise. He wasn't even the original villain, and since joining properly in Part 2, he's died a bunch of times, came back as a zombie, invaded Manhattan, been to hell, and then space, and even faced off against Freddy Krueger. He's one tough dude, or I guess one tough zombie dude, but his first of many deaths did not live up to his reputation as a badass. Part 3 follows Jason finally donning the iconic hockey mask and, you guessed it, once again going to town on a bunch of teens, including Chris and a biker called Ali. After the usual shenanigans, it comes down to the two of them in a barn for a final confrontation with the masked killer. And it's not quite the fireworks display the build-up suggested. Chris manages to whack Jason on the noggin and then hang him by a rope, but that's not enough and he pulls himself free. Afterwards, he tussles with Ali and Chris plonks Jason on the head again, this time with an axe, and then she just wins. In the end, all it took was one swing to take the hulking monster down. However, this ending might be so underwhelming because the original ending actually ended with Jason beheading Chris until it was changed to a victory.
Le Chiffre, Casino Royale. Mads Mikkelsen plays a great bad guy, and while none are quite as brilliant as his refreshing version of Hannibal Lecter, there is perhaps one exception. In 2006, James Bond got a new face. Brosnan was out, deemed too weedy and too 90s. It was time to go back to basics. Carefully walking the fine line between self-parody and anachronism, Bond was back, but this time he was muscular, cynical, vulnerable, and usually drunk. This was the Bond we knew from Ian Fleming's source material, warts and all. What was needed was an equally fresh counterpoint, and Mikkelsen didn't disappoint. Modern, cruel, and with a talent for making money, his Le Chiffre was one cool cat. In the penultimate act of Casino Royale, Bond finds himself in a tight spot. Captured and badly wounded, Le Chiffre proceeds to torture Bond with a length of knotted rope, right where it would hurt the most. As Bond is forced to choose between his genitalia or Vesper's life, suddenly Mr. White appears and assassinates Le Chiffre in an instant. He rescues Bond and Vesper at the 11th hour, only to be captured by Bond at the very end of the film. As for Le Chiffre, an awesome bad guy for sure, but his demise is abrupt to say the least.
Dollface and Pin-Up Girl, The Strangers Pray at Night. For the most part, The Strangers Pray at Night is a pretty good sequel, but halfway through it becomes clear that this isn't the follow-up fans waited years to see. That's because the strangers the title refers to, those masked psychopaths out for a night of hunting, were formidable foes in the original movie, capable of toying with their prey and overpowering them at every turn. But the sequel makes it clear that they're very much human. In fact, the second half of the movie essentially turns the tables on the regular horror dynamic, and it's actually the villains who are slowly dispatched one by one. This isn't quite the spectacle it could have been though, as two of the antagonists are easily overpowered, with a lone heroine quickly dispatching the female killers. The main stranger, the man in the mask, gets a much more satisfying death, but it kinda makes you wonder how any of them got through the first movie alive when they're so easily killed by one person. Alright, and another heavily wounded person in the sequel.
Bill. Kill Bill. Throughout Kill Bill, Bill is referenced countless times in conversations and flashbacks before we finally get to meet him. Bill is the leader of the Deadly Vipers and the bride's former lover, a man of global recognition from the States to Japan. By the time we get to see him on screen, it's hard to know what to expect. The last thing we thought we were getting was a discussion on superhero ethics, but then again, this is Tarantino. And a conversation is worth a million gunfights in his universe. It seems that Bill, while an intimidating person and ruthlessly protective, is actually quite sensitive and clearly hurt by the bride's decision to leave him. In the last act of Kill Bill Volume 2, the expectations for a spectacular spot of martial arts were high, but no, this guy is taken down by the infamous 5-point palm exploding heart technique. After the bride's precision chest tapping, he just drops down dead on his back garden lawn without swinging a single punch. Emperor Palpatine, The Rise of Skywalker. Played with infectious enthusiasm by British veteran actor Ian McDiarmid, Palpatine just brings a ray of happiness with him to every scene, laughing with such evil glee that it makes the job of Sith look immensely appealing. McDiarmid delivers every single line with so much conviction that he pretty much saved the prequels from themselves single-handedly. The same, unfortunately, cannot be said of the sequel trilogy. Unplanned, structureless, and overly dependent on fourth-wall-breaking fan service at every available opportunity, these films films are felt by many to be a bit of a letdown. By the third installment, Palpatine had returned, not that he fitted into the plot anywhere, but at least this was the character that we all knew and loved. Seemingly cloned or revived or something, Palpatine and Rey go head to head, as he declares he is all of the Sith, to be met by Rey, claiming that she is all the Jedi. Palpatine then gets blasted with a ton of CGI lightning and is disintegrated, and that's the end of that.
Freddy Krueger, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Though there have been some pretty bad offenders on this list so far, the disappointment of Freddy's death in Freddy's Dead The Final Nightmare stung extra because, well, it's right there in the title. This was the moment the entire film had been built around. Old Fred Krueger was no stranger to death, and a bunch of the previous films saw him being killed either in the dream world or in reality, but his quote-unquote final film promised to end him once and for all. But for a demon who survived being yanked into reality and booby-trapped to death and had the souls of his victims housed in his chest tear him apart, what was the thing that finally put him down for good? A pipe bomb. A single, crappy pipe bomb. The end of The Final Nightmare sees the once scary villain pinned to a wall and stabbed by his own glove before a pipe bomb is stabbed into his chest as well. Before dying, he quips to the camera because, of course he does, as some of the shoddiest effects you've ever seen focus on his head flying at the lens. I mean, just look at this. Look at the state of this. This was how he was supposed to go. I'm so glad they made a sequel.
Pennywise, It. Pennywise has the ability to induce our deepest, darkest fears, and in turn feeds from that fear. Whether it's clowns or germs, he's going to latch onto that one thing and keep pushing those buttons until you're nothing but a corpse in a storm drain. The 1990 version took Lame to a new level when, after a cracking and terrifying start, he transforms into a plasticine stop-motion spider crab thing and presumably melts on the top of a radiator somewhere down the sewer. In 2019, while again off to a great beginning, the climax descended into another crummy Stephen King ending. Confronted and finally cornered, what remains of the Losers Club take a leaf out of Nancy Thompson's playbook and decide to take away his power of fear. Reduced to nothing more than a whimpering baby, Pennywise, who has survived for millennia, can't face the awesome and terrifying power of a few insults, and straight up dies after being flamed by a group of 40-year-olds.
Nemesis, Resident Evil Apocalypse. When it comes to Resident Evil villains, it doesn't get much bigger than Nemesis. The giant monstrosity debuted in the third game and relentlessly hunted players down, tormenting them with a rocket launcher and a punch that could take the head clean off a regular human being. Consequently, when it was revealed that the character would be making his big screen debut in Resident Evil Apocalypse, fans couldn't wait to see the terrifying villain made even scarier now that he was more than about 5 pixels on a screen. This version wasn't a total write-off initially, but all hope was lost by the time it came for him to square off against hero Alice. Instead of terrorizing her from the shadows, Nemesis was instead placed in a Mortal Kombat-esque one-on-one fight to the death with his opponent. In this setting, nothing about him was scary, and watching this stocky, stiff monster start fighting like he was in the Matrix or something just looked dumb. That's not even his death scene though, because afterwards he turns good through the power of love, I guess, and then is crushed after a helicopter falls on top of him. The scene is so quick and so shoddy that it almost looks like a joke in isolation. Sadly though, that's actually how the biggest Resident Evil villain of all time is dispatched in this movie. Just tossed away like the rest of the continuity.
The Tripods, War of the Worlds. H.G. Wells' 1898 sci-fi game-changer War of the Worlds has shaped the literary and cinematic universe for 122 years, and continues to be one of the greatest, most prophetic novels ever written. The book has been adapted for television, radio, stage, and cinema, most recently in Steven Spielberg's 2005 blockbuster of the same name. The action of the film is pretty good, but it ended in line with Wells' original plot, which seemed like a bit of an anticlimax. The alien invaders are brought down by the simplest of things, microbes. This was definitely exciting and thrilling and interesting in a book from 1898. It was not so amazing and climactic to experience on screen, however, in 2005. The Martians are simply unable to deal with Earth's many varied diseases, and they die as rapidly as they arrived, with disappointingly little fanfare. The Joker, Batman 1989. Jack Nicholson's Joker is still rightfully regarded as a masterpiece of a movie villain. Dropped into a vat of chemicals and permanently scarred by a stray bullet to the face, Jack Napier would transform into the Crown Prince of Crime. Insane and immaculately dressed, the Joker planned to poison the city's population with nerve gas. Thankfully, Batman corners the villain at the top of Gotham's cathedral for the film's final showdown. The Joker plans to make his escape via helicopter when Batman snags his ankle at the last minute and snares the line to a gargoyle, preventing his takeoff. When the craft pulls up, the Joker is suspended with the weight of the stone statue pulling him down. Unable to take the weight, he plummets to his death in one of the worst cartoony special effects in cinema at the time. Largely, Burton's film managed to be a level above the hilariously campy 60s Batman level of low-quality cheesiness, but this ending to one of cinema's greatest villains detracts a little from what should have been considered one of Nicholson's finest roles.